Hello, welcome to another A Star to G briefing. Last time I asked you to consider what your learners thought about the way that your lessons and your teaching impacted on them. And I asked you to think about three measurements or three parameters that they might consider. Whether something happened often, whether something happened sometimes, or whether something happened never. You might remember I gave you a few statements to think about in relation to those three parameters, sometimes, often and never. So I'll give you a few more now just to help you think about your lessons and your teaching. So here's a question. We are made to think. Yeah. Well, you might say, yeah, of course I make them think. The real question I'm asking you to think about is that what your learners think? That they're made to think? Would they say that happens often, sometimes, or never? Here's another one. The teacher uses lots of ways to help us learn. Would they think that often? Would they think that sometimes? Or would they think that never? These are important questions, and they're not the only questions by any means that you can use to evaluate the teaching and learning situation that you set up. There's lots of checklists. You can download the Ofsted expectations. Your own centre will have its own parameters for lesson observation and what makes a good lesson and what makes a good or outstanding lesson. But these are really useful because instead of thinking about what you're doing, which of course is crucially important, these help you think about the reception, who's receiving your teaching and how it impacts on them. So to give you the idea, I'll give you one or two more. Here we go. We get feedback on our progress during the session. Well, you're now thinking, oh, my learners would say that often happens. Well, that's great, especially if we can ask all of them the question and they all think it often happens. Or do they sometimes think that happens? Does it vary from lesson to lesson? Might you be forgetting that feedback is one of the most powerful motivators to keep learners engaged and keep their interest up and to keep their motivation strong? So it may be important for you personally to think of ways of giving feedback about their progress all the way through the session, every session. I'll give you one more and then you can think about this one. The teacher presents new information to us using examples, pictures, diagrams, and real objects. Well, this is about how you resource your lesson, isn't it? About how you illustrate your points. Because if you just say to your class, you know how, or can you all think about, you're relying on their imagination and their experience. And often what's needed is the stimulus of real context, real exemplars. I'll give you the question again. The teacher presents new information to us using examples, pictures, diagrams, and real objects. And as ever, in this little sequence, I want you to think about whether your learners would say that happens often, whether it happens sometimes, or whether it happens never. That's all I want you to think about for this particular briefing, and I look forward to seeing you next time on A Star to G. Thank you. See you soon.